Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's English class with Bright Educational Style channel. In this lesson, we are going to learn of one of the most important and commonly used verb tenses in English, which is the simple present tense. Basically, the simple present is a tense we use every day when we talk about what we do regularly, what is true, or what always happens. So, by the end of this lesson, you will be able to understand how and when to use the simple present tense correctly in real life situations. Here is what we will cover today. We will start by understanding what the simple present tense means and how it helps us to describe daily habits and permanent facts. Next, we will look at how to form sentences in simple present tense, affirmative form for positive sentences, negative form, how to say something doesn't happen, and also question form, how to ask questions in the simple present tense. Then we will explore when to use it, to talk about habits and routines, to express general truth or facts for permanent situations, for scheduled events, and for feelings, thoughts, or even mental states. We will also learn some simple spelling rules for verbs when we use them with the subject he, she, and it. Like, for example, play, plays. So, if you noticed, we added an S at the end of the verb. So, we need to add an S at the end of the verb when the pronoun is he, she, or it. Finally, we will finish with some fun exercises to help you use the simple present tense naturally in your own sentences. So let's begin with a definition to understand what do we mean by a simple present tense. So the simple present tense is one of the most common tenses in English. It is basically used to talk about actions, events, or situations that happen regularly, are always true, or are permanent in nature. Some examples include things we do regularly. For example, I wake up at 7 o'clock every day, or she drinks coffee every morning. If you notice, we added an S to the verb drink because we have the subject she. Also, we have things that are always true. What water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, or birds fly in the sky. So here we are talking about something true. Things that don't change often. For example, I live in New York, or she works in a hospital. This is something that we can consider it as permanent. Also used for timetables or planned events. For example, the bus leaves at 9 a.m. or the train arrives at noon. Also used for emotions, opinions, or mental states. For example, she believes in hard work, or he likes music. Again, if you noticed, we added an S at the end of the verb when we are talking about the subject he, she, and it. Moving on to the structure of the verbs. We have affirmative form, which basically based on a subject plus the base of the form plus s at the end of the verb or es based on the verb. So for example, for the subject I, you, we, and they, for the verb we use the base form of the verb. For example, I play football every day. For the subject he, she, and it, we need to add an s or es based on the verb at the end. For example, she plays football every day, or she goes to school by bus. Don't worry, we will learn later on what are the verbs that we need to add an s and what are the verbs that we need to add an es. For the negative form, we have the subject plus auxiliary verb do or does based on the subject plus not plus the base of the verb. So for the subject I, you, we, and they, we need to add an auxiliary verb do, not, or basically don't. For example, I don't like coffee. I doesn't like coffee, it seems incorrect because doesn't, we use it with the subject he, she, and it. For example, she doesn't eat meat. Alright? As a note, always remember after do, does, the main verb always stays in its base form. So we don't need to add an s or an es at the end of the verb. For the question form, we need to switch positions between the auxiliary verb do or does and the subject. So do or does plus the subject plus the base form of the verb. For example, for the yes-no question, we need to add the auxiliary verb do or does based on the subject, because if you remember, for do it's related to the subject I, you, we, or they, and does it's related to the subject he, she, or it. As an example, for a yes-no question, do you like pizza? Of course, the answer would be yes or no. Yes, I do like pizza, or no, I don't like pizza. For the WH question, which includes where, when, what, for example, we need to add the auxiliary verb do or does plus the subject plus the base form of the verb. For example, where does she live? Same thing as we saw before, after the do and does, the main verb always stays in its base form. No need to add an s or es at the end. Moving on to uses of the simple present. These are some examples related to different topics. For example, if we are talking about habits and routines, for example, I brush my teeth every morning, so something that we do regularly. She goes to school by bus. This is considered truth or something permanent. So if you notice the verb go, we added an es because basically we have the subject she. Second example, they play football on weekends, or we watch TV in the evening. Those are some examples related to habits and routines. Always pay attention to the subjects she, he, and it because we need to add an s if the sentence is affirmative. Also, we have some examples related to general truth or facts. For example, the sun rises in the east. This is a fact. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. This is also a fact. The earth moves around the sun. Same thing for this one. Ice melts at 0 degrees Celsius. Also, this is considered a fact. We use the simple present tense. Some other examples when we are talking about permanent situations. For example, they live in London, or he works at a bank, or they own a small shop. This is something not changeable, permanent. We can use it also when we are talking about scheduled events. For example, the train leaves at 6 p.m. or the concert starts at 8 or the movie begins at 7 p.m. Also, we use the simple present to talk about feelings, thoughts, or even mental states. For example, I love chocolate, or she believes in God, or they need help. So all those verbs are in the simple present because we're talking about feelings, thoughts, and mental states. Moving on to spelling rules for adding an s or es at the end of the verbs when we are talking, of course, about the subject he, she, and it. So for the most of the verbs, we add an s at the end of the verb. For example, read, reads. Walk, walks. Cook, cooks. So basically here we added an s because we have subject either he, she, or it. For some verbs ending in ch, sh, x, s, o, we basically have to add an es, not an s. For example, go, we need to add an es to say goes. Same thing for watch, since it does ends with ch, we need to add an es. Same thing for mix, we need to add an es since the verb ends with an x. And same thing for kiss, since the verb ends with an s, we need to add es. Some examples for verbs ending in ch, and we will add an es at the end of the verb when we are talking about subject he, she, and it. For example, she watches TV every evening, or he teaches English at school. Some verbs also ending in sh. Also, we need to add an es for the subject he, she, and it. The train finishes its route at 10 p.m. So basically here we're talking about it, the train, finishes its route at 10 p.m. She washes the dishes after dinner. Basically, we have the subject she, so we need to add an es at the end of the verb, of course, because the verb here it ends with an sh. Some verbs ending in x, also we need to add an es when we are talking about he, she, and it. She mixes the ingredients carefully, or he fixes cars for a living. Some examples for verbs ending in s. Also, we need to add an es. For example, he misses his friends, or the player passes the ball to his teammate. We also have some verbs ending in the letter O. We need to add an es at the end of the verb. For example, she does. We are not allowed to say she do. She does her homework every evening is the correct form. Same thing for the second one. He goes to school by bus. Since those two verbs ends with O, we need to add an es in the simple present when we are talking about the subject he, she, or it. For the most of the verbs, we just have to add an s at the end of the verb. For example, she walks to school every morning, or she sings beautifully. This is very important. It's related to consonant and vowels. For some verbs ending in a consonant plus y, we need to change the y by adding an ies. As a reminder, when we're talking about consonant, all other letters of the alphabet, including B, C, D, F, G, H, G, K, L, M, N, P, Q, R, S, T, V, W, X, Z, and sometimes Y. Y as a consonant. When the Y is at the beginning of the word, it usually acts as a consonant, such as, for example, yellow or yarn. Let's go back to our table for some examples. For example, the word or the verb study. We can see that the verb study ends with a D and Y. D, it is considered a consonant plus Y. So we need to change, according to the rule, change the Y and add an IES. So for he, she, and it becomes studies. Alright? As an example, she studies English every day. Same thing for cry. We can see that cry ends with an R, which is a consonant, and Y. So we need to change the Y and add an IES. Cry, cries. For example, the baby cries at night. Same thing for fly, try, and carry. For example, the bird flies high in the sky. For try, we added an IES. He tries to learn new words. Same thing for carry. It ends with a consonant and Y. We need to change the Y to IES. She carries her bag to school. Next rule is about verbs ending in a vowel plus Y. We just need to add an S at the end of the verb. Nothing to be changed. As a reminder, vowels includes the letters A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Y as a vowel when the Y is in the middle or at the end of a word. It is most often a vowel such as gym or funny. So going back to our table for examples, we have the verb play. It ends with a vowel A and Y. So we don't have to change anything. You just need to add an S for he, she, and it form. For example, he plays football every weekend. Same thing for enjoy. It ends with an O, which is a vowel, plus Y. We don't have to change anything. We just need to add an S at the end of the verb. Enjoys for he, she, and it. She enjoys, for example, music. Same thing for say. As an example, he says hello to everyone. Same thing goes for buy. We just need to add an S. Buys, for example, she buys fruit every morning. Practice time. Now it's your turn to practice what you've learned. I will show you a few sentences with blank spaces, and your job is to fill in the blanks with the correct form of the verb in the simple present tense. You can of course write your answers in the comment section. I will be checking and replying to some of them. Those are the sentences. The first one, she go to school every morning. What is the correct form of the verb go in the simple present? Second, they play football on weekends. Third, he not like coffee. So this is the negative form. 4. I read a book before bed. 5. The sun rises in the east. What is the correct form of the verbs? Number 6. My father work in a hospital. Something permanent. What is the correct form here? 7. We not watch TV every night. Again, this is a negative form. Number 8, we have you speak English. This is a question form. Number 9, it rain a lot in winter. And lastly, number 10, the train leave at 8 o'clock. So as I said before, you can practice what you've learned in this lesson, and you can write your answers in the comment section, and I will be checking and replying to some of them. So, are you ready? Let's start learning and speaking English. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on, of course, notifications so you never miss an English lesson from our channel. Thank you, Bright Educational Style.